Jim Manske. I want to introduce you. You've been married and playing with Jory Manske for 33 years. You share a passion for compassion. You're a CNVC certified trainer, a mediator, a group facilitator, an NLP practitioner, and have decades of spiritual practice. So perfectly qualified to answer this question, I think. What is the art and science of happiness?
It's a great question, and it's been my life's passion to answer that question. And it might be fun to divide it into two questions, the art of happiness and the science of happiness. So for me, the art of happiness is really around taking responsibility for the creation that is my life, to recognize that my life is my canvas. So the metaphor of me being the artist that's helping to create my life given the raw materials. I don't have a whole lot of control over the raw materials that life throws at me, but I do have a lot of choice about how I use what comes at me. And so that's kind of the art part of it, is learning to acknowledge and develop the skills that all human beings have in order to become the artists that are deep within to create more happiness in their life. The second thing is the science of happiness, and that has actually two kind of threads to it. One is Jory and I met in a spiritual community back in the late 70s that was based on the science of happiness, which was the work of Ken Kai's. And he wrote a book called The Handbook to Higher Consciousness, and the subtitle was The Science of Happiness. And his idea, it was that you could take modern research about what was going on in our brains and combine it with ancient wisdom traditions of Buddhism and Christianity, and mix in a dash of psychology, Rogerian psychology, and poof, out comes the science of happiness. And now it's evolved that with the work of Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, now there really is a science of happiness. There's thousands of research projects that have already happened or are underway right now where they're digging deep into what is happiness, how can we cultivate it, what are the kind of the common themes that we can use, and what's the science that supports it.
Well, and how do you know if you're happy, Jim?
Well, I feel happy right now, and so what I can notice is just tuning into my own body, that there's a sense of openness. I'm also feeling curious. So there's kind of, I'm also grateful for this opportunity that we're able to connect through the miracle of modern technology. Here I am out in literally the middle of nowhere. I mean, you can't be more in the middle of nowhere than being in Hawaii. And then here we are in the middle of nowhere, on top of the middle of nowhere, because we're in Maui, in a kind of a remote area of Maui called Haiku, and yet we're able to connect. And I can see your smiling face, and that just brings a sense of joy inside of me as I savor that ability that we have developed as human beings to connect in that way, through technology and through other, and just if you were sitting here next to me, we could still connect. And so I just noticed that the way I know I'm happy is I have this open feeling, this sense of curiosity. I'm generating positive emotion, and there's no sense, what's absent is a sense of resistance. I'm just in a flow with life. So that's how I know I'm happy.
And why are some people generally happier than others?
I think there's a couple things going on. I think that because of there may be some genetic components to happiness. Science is showing that some people may be born with a certain proclivity to be happier than other people. So that might be the cards that we've been dealt might affect how happy some people are. But I think that we have a lot of habit energy that can keep us stuck in patterns of thinking, patterns of speaking, and patterns of behavior that are not likely to lead to a sense of happiness or openness to life. And that's we can't do anything about the genetic material that we've been given, but we can figure out how to optimize what we've been given and then to enhance and increase it. There's a lot of research that shows that people have a happiness set point. And the idea here is that that there's kind of a baseline of happiness that people experience, and that if something great happens, like you win the lottery or something like that, then you might have a bump in the amount of happiness that you feel. but then you'll gradually return to your happiness set point. Likewise, if something terrible happens, you get a diagnosis, or a friend dies, or some other tragedy befalls you, there may be a dip in the happiness that you're experiencing. But again, it will come back up to this set point. And so to acknowledge that we have a set point is one thing, and then to figure out what power do I have as a human being to gradually increase my set point. And that's what's exciting to me, is through the work of Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, and through the work of Dr. Rosenberg with nonviolent communication, we have access to skills and capabilities and all kinds of ideas that can actually help us to gradually increase our set point.
So how do we influence our capacity then to live a meaningful and fulfilling life? And that's, I'm guessing that's part of the main definition of happiness, or one of the main ingredients.
Yeah, well, we're using as the takeoff place for our model of happiness. We call it Remap, REMAP, and this is mixing up the order of things that Dr. Seligman came up with at the University of Pennsylvania. And we like the idea of remapping, of being able to overlay a new frame on the life that we're living. And so the 5 elements of this remap, first are relationships. Connection is a deeply important part of being human, and being connected through relationships is a very important part of cultivating happiness. People who are involved in relationships tend to be people who are loners or singletons, people who have complex web work of relationships where they're involved with lots of different people in lots of different ways tend to have more happiness. So that's the joy for me of NVC, nonviolent communication, is that it helps us to make the relationships that we have more fun by increasing the quality of connection. So that's the R part, it is a relationship. Then the E stands for engagement, finding something about life that really engages us. Something that induces what's called the flow state. And this is a state where you're so into something that you kind of, yourself kind of dissolves into whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's doing a video interview, or giving empathy to somebody, or digging a hole in the garden, or doing brain surgery. Somehow you lose yourself. So it's this hypo-egoic state that is accessible to human beings, and it's directly related. The science shows that the more often you are able to enter into a flow state and be completely engaged with life, the happier you'll be. So that's the E. M stands for meaning or purpose. And so this is when you can relate your activities and your relationships to some greater purpose, that you see that you're part of something bigger than just yourself, that you are part of a system, and that what you do matters, that you can actually, that what you do means something. So whether it's being a parent, that that the efforts that you make towards parenting your children influence them, and then potentially the ripples go out into the world as they grow up, or your relationships, or your work, or whatever, that there's a sense of meaning and purpose. So that's the M. Then the A stands for accomplishment. This is taking the time to slow down and notice that you've got something done, and to enjoy the glow that is the natural occurrence of accomplishment. If you think about what accomplishment means, it means that you had a goal, you applied energy and effort to achieve a goal, and then you finished the goal. There was an outcome that you were hoping to get. So how about we take the time to enjoy that we've actually arrived, that we accomplished what we set out for. It feels good to acknowledge that we've actually completed something, and rather than just to go on to the next thing on the list. So to take the time to actually experience the joy of accomplishment. And then the fifth thing is P for positive emotion. The natural outcome of all those other 4 elements is that it generates a sense of positive emotion. And so that when you're involved in relationships that really matter, you have a sense of happiness and connection and fun that comes out of that, likewise with the other 3. And the last thing about this thing about positive emotion is that's something that's very much under our choicefulness and control, because at any moment, even right now, you could think of something wonderful that happened today, something that went well. And just by simply shifting your attention to what went well, you'll begin to feel positive emotion, the emotion of gratitude, or the emotion of thankfulness, or whatever you want to call it, just by simply asking the question, what went well today? So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, Jim, I think it works. I feel happier.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad it does work. Yeah, I have a friend who has struggled with depression for much of her adult life. And when she learned the simple technique of considering at the end of each day what went well and writing it down, she would write down 3 things at the end of each day that went well for her. She said it completely shifted her relationship with her depression. It's not that she no longer doesn't get depressed, but that when she is depressed, she sees that there's something that she has the power to do to shift her consciousness back to her baseline of happiness.